Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Inside Man United. My name is Rowan Brennan. Thank you very much for joining me once again. If you are new around these parts, and of course, if you do like the content, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button. So I'm going to do a bit of a series off the back of the United game with City, all the injury problems we have, top four probably being out of reach. I think it's time that we have a bit of a deep dive into the United squad and have a look at who needs to go, who needs to stay, and who we might need to bring in. So I'm going to do a bit of a series, today being the first episode looking at the defence, tomorrow midfield, and after that looking at those forward positions. We're going to have a quick look at who to buy, who to sell, who to keep, and let's get into it. Now, in United's defensive area, it's been a huge area of concern for a variety of reasons. We have huge amount of injury troubles. We've seen a lack of squad depth when you look at our bench against City and what options we had to bring on. I mean, we have no left back. We're struggling for centre halves. Our right back is missing. And given the amount of links that United have had throughout the summer towards new recruits, defence has, without doubt, been the area where the most names have been linked. So starting off is Andre Onana. Of course, if Erik Ten Hag stays, I would like to see Onana stay. He was one of our key players against Manchester City. And despite a shaky start and understandable doubts over his ability to become the United number one, I think he is settling in to that position a little bit better. And for someone who has been on the receiving end of a huge amount of shots, we have received or allowed opposition to create the second most amount of shots, with us only behind Sheffield United, a statistic that I think has done the rounds now so much everyone is quite aware of it. Onana has had to face down a huge amount of shots, and for the most part he's done quite well in the last few weeks and has been one of our better performers. You don't just become one of the key threats and main areas for consideration when you're Pep Guardiola with Manchester City trying to chase your first Champions League. And Inter Milan were very unlucky not to win that. And Andre Onana was one of the key threats for Guardiola in that game and his ability to build out play from the back. And he's a very foundational player in how a team that Ten Hag wants to manage can put together its defensive solidity and how it wants to move the ball forward and retain possession. So for me, Andre Onana, not an area of massive concern for me. So I think Andre Onana should stay, especially if Ten Hag is staying. Even if he leaves, I would like to see Onana stay. I think there's a very, very good keeper there despite his shaky start. So happy to see him stay in between the sticks. Now, the rest of the area is a little bit harder to judge. In terms of the fullback positions, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, I think he's been dreadfully unlucky. He was a key reason why a lot of people began to have faith in Erik Ten Hag last season, due to the fact that he did improve as a player quite visibly. He was getting forward more. His defensive side had kind of tightened back up to what it was before he joined United and when he initially joined United. But he did go through a bit of a dark period, and it seemed Erik Ten Hag had gotten him out of that. And he was a mainstay in United's defence last season, which was very, very mean. Despite those, 3 games where we conceded 17 goals, United, minus those 3 games, defensive record was 27 goals conceded for the season, which was a phenomenal record. And we did win a lot of games 1-0, but a huge part of that was Lisandro Martinez playing very well, Luke Shaw being resurgent, Varane responding to the presence of Martinez, and of course, Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Unfortunately, this season he has got injuries, and Dalot's come in, and now he is the kind of player of the season candidate for United. Not that there are many people that are going to give him competition, but Diogo Dalot, due to those injuries, has now cemented his place in the team, and his lack of injury worries makes him a very strong candidate, with Wan-Bissaka having been out for quite a while this season. You need to be good. You need to be better offensively than you do defensively. We've seen attacking players go into defensive positions. We saw Victor Moses under Antonio Conte. We saw Ashley Young at United. We saw Antonio Valencia. Good attacking players often, retreat back in defensive positions when, you might have better attacking options available within the club, but they're still very good going forward and still offer a huge threat in those fullback positions. And we saw Antonio Valencia and Ashley Young perform incredibly well there for United over the years. Yes, they did have their off days. Of course, everyone does. But you need to be better going forward than you do in defence. And the reason for that is when you're a centre half, players can go left, players can go right. There's more options that you need to take care of. When you're a fullback, that byline, that touch line, that does offer a kind of a boundary and a border. And it does kind of act like an extra man or a defensive partner to have that byline beside you as a fullback. I can push him out wide if I don't want him to cut in and take a shot off if it's an inverted winger. or I'm comfortable enough with pushing him out wide and those crosses swinging in because I've got Rafael Varane and Harry Maguire or Lisandro Martinez in there to bash those balls out. So you do need to be a little bit. The defensive responsibility isn't as great at fullback as it is for centre half. So for me, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, I don't think he's going to oust Diogo Dalot. I still think we can get a price for him. He's a good age. I think he wants to move on. He wants to be a first team player, and I think his agent, when he did speak to United, was told in no uncertain terms that Diogo Dalot, I think, is now the number one fullback choice for Erik Ten Hag. So for me, while I'd be sorry to see him go, I think he's done quite well in kind of, restoring the form that made us want him in the first place. I think we could get between 25 and 30 million for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and that would go a long way towards, a transfer kitty. So unfortunately, I would have to say a goodbye to Aaron Wan-Bissaka. In terms of Diogo Dalot, I think it's quite clear that he gets to stay. I don't like the revisionism going on that he's somehow been this great defensive player for us this season. He has still been a part of one of our worst defensive seasons in my memory for a good long time. However, he has played very well in a lot of games. He does still, suffer from defensive lapses, but he still is only 24 and learning his trade. And I do think he could grow into be one of the best fullbacks in the league if he was given a little bit more time. I don't think he's there yet. In fact, I don't even think he's close, but he does offer a great threat going forward. I think he's got United DNA. He's got the right attitude. And I think it's quite clear that Diogo Dalot is going to stay. And he has shown that flexibility in being able to play on the other side of the pitch, which he did quite well against Saka in the game against Arsenal. So he does offer some flexibility there. So I'd be very, very happy to see Diogo Dalot cement that right back spot and have him in the ranks, also due to his flexibility. On the other side, we have Luke Shaw. Now, Luke Shaw is a concern just because of his injury worries. He has missed 200 games for United since he's joined the club, and even taking into account that horrific injury he got a number of years back with that double leg break, taking all those games that he missed, which is about a season and a half, out of the equation, he still is someone that's going to be missing 15 to 20 games a season for you, and he's been like that consistently as a young man. The older he gets, that's not going to improve a whole lot, and now we've seen that he's out injured again. The reason you keep Luke Shaw is that when he's fit, he's one of the best left backs in the league, bar none, and potentially the world. He is a very, very good left back. He has finally become the player I think United fans were hoping he would become when we first bought him. And, there were times where I think everyone were happy to sell him, but faith was kept in him for one reason or another, and he has delivered that when he has been fit. Also, his ability to play in those centre half options when he covered very, very well for Lisandro Martinez means that it's a great option to have. So for me, Luke Shaw, he gets to stay. I think when fit, he's our starting left back, but we do need to have contingencies in place for when he is going to be out, and that is not an if, but a when. It is absolutely inevitable that he will get injured and will spend spells on the sidelines for various amounts of time. So Luke Shaw, I would certainly keep. But we also do have Tiro Malacia to consider as well, and that is a player that, while I think has ability, I think he has a very low ceiling. I don't think he's going to be ever putting Luke Shaw under a real threat, and you need to have players that will provide a genuine threat to your starting fullbacks position. He has had 2 surgeries this year. He's been out for a long time. He is very injury prone, and hopefully that will improve. But with fullbacks, given the nature of the type of work they do, there's a lot of running. It's hard on their hamstrings. They have to turn up and down the pitch a lot. That puts a lot of stress on your ankles, your knees, your hips. Your hamstrings take a battering, and fullbacks do put their bodies under a lot more stress than a lot of other people on the pitch, given the nature of the job. It's a very taxing role, and you need to have very, very fit, very able-bodied people to perform that duty consistently week in, week out for an entire season. Tiro Malacia, he's not a young man anymore. He's going to be 25. Will he ever be able to get over these injuries? Who knows? I think it's probably best if we move him on. We might only get 10 million for him. But I think with Harry Amas coming through, the young United fullback, plays left back. He is very young. He is 16, 17, but there is very, very high hopes for him. And I think we need to give him opportunities next season now that he's up training with the first team. And it looks like there's a lot of faith in him. Alvaro Fernandez, who's gone out on loan to Girona. I think he was with Benfica, and now with Girona with an eye for a full transfer in the summer. He was allowed to go out on loan because of Harry Amas, being this kind of new quantity in the same way that Facundo Pellistri was allowed to go out on loan because Ten Hag liked Omari Forson. But again, that's for another episode. So Harry Amas coming in at left back. We are being linked with Gutierrez from La Liga as well, young 22-year-old fullback. A lot of newspaper articles saying United are very, very heavily linked with this kid, and it looks like left back reinforcements are going to be important given what a weak area that's been for us this season. Yes, we've been unlucky with injuries, but these things happen. I think it was a disgrace we got rid of Reguilon, given that where we are now, we have Lindelof filling in as a left back. I thought it was incredibly short-sighted to let go of Reguilon. But that's the way these things go. So Gutierrez coming in at that left back position to maybe provide some competition for Luke Shaw, while Harry Amas comes in and, is an option, even though as a young lad, I think it's time he got some exposure to the first team and we find out whether or not he does actually have a future. So with those fullback positions covered, we move into the centre half positions, and this is where some really hard decisions need to be made. Harry Maguire, I think his stock has risen this season. I think he's responded well to having the captaincy taken away from him. I think he's shown a huge level of professionalism. I think he's a credit to himself, and he has shown a very strong amount of character in being able to deal with the setbacks that he's had at the club, the abuse he's received, taking the captaincy away from him, clearly wanting to be moved on, and then being able to respond the way he has this season, having been kept and not getting that move to West Ham. I think his stock has only risen. He wants to be a starting centre half. I don't think he's good enough to be a starting centre half. I think he's the right tool for the right job. I think for a team that is going to be absorbing a lot of pressure, is going to have a low defensive block, does not want to play high up the pitch, I think Harry Maguire is a fantastic option. I mean, he's a very, very good defender at what he does, but he just lacks in some areas, like being able to carry the ball forward confidently. His range of passing can be suspect, and he simply doesn't score enough goals for a man that gets on the end of the ball quite a lot in the opposition penalty box. He just doesn't put the ball away. I think he's very good at getting his head on the ball. He's very good at that. I just think he lacks the finesse in being able to direct the ball into the goal. And we've seen him get on the end of so many crosses and corners and just not being able to put it into the net or putting it directly at the keeper. So I think we could get anywhere between 30 and 40 million in a transfer fee for him. That'll go a long way towards the transfer kitty. And I think it's time to move Harry Maguire on and bring in someone else. Rafael Varane, a very good player on his day when he's fit. But again, this is a player that I don't think is going to be improving in terms of fitness. He is the wrong side of 30. There is interest from Saudi Arabia, and I think we could do well to get that 1.4 million a month in wages off the books. We're clearly not going to get a fee for him. I don't think we're too keen on renewing his contract. If he was willing to accept 150 grand a week, we know he's only going to be playing 30 games a season. He is very injury prone. And while it is nice to have a player with his experience, the honours that he's won, having played at the highest level, both internationally and at club level with Real Madrid and France, his wages are very high. And I think it's time that we brought in a centre half that is going to be relied upon and can play for a full season without the expectation that we're going to be losing them for 15 to 20 games a season due to an inevitable injury. So Harry Maguire and Rafael Varane would be gone for me. Victor Lindelof, a decent centre half, but I don't think was ever playing at a level that would put him in the shop window to any other top teams across Europe or in England. He's a fine kind of defender, but he's backup at best. He's been at the club long enough now, and he just isn't of the requisite quality for a team that's looking to mount a serious title challenge. And it's time we moved him on. We did extend his contract by a year to maintain some value, and there is talk of AC Milan coming in and wanting to get him for 15 million. I think it's outrageous that we'd be selling a player with his level of experience, his age profile, and his ability. He is a good defender, but 15 million for him is quite low. But United have never really been very good at getting good transfer fees for the players that they've sold. So for me, Rafael Varane, Harry Maguire, and Victor Lindelof are certainly going to be surplus to requirements, and I'd be happy to see them go. Johnny Evans, on the other hand, that is a player who I think has done very well this season, far better than I think people expected. I wanted him to sign when I knew he was training with the club. I was screaming that I thought we should have given him a 1-year contract. great experience. He's a winner. He's been at the club during the good times. He knows what it takes to compete at this club at the very highest level. He's done it all. He's won it all. And he's done very well this season when he's come in, far better than I think people expected. You need someone like him around the dressing room, particularly given the profile of player I think we're going to be recruiting in the summer, where we're going to be going for young, hungry talent. They will need players like Johnny Evans to look to for experience, not only for what to do on the pitch, but how to navigate a club like Manchester United, deal with the pressure and deal with how you need to get into that first team and cement your place. So for me, Johnny Evans is an absolute no-brainer, should be kept on for another season. He's going to be low cost with a huge amount of experience. I think he will give us so much more than we give him, and I look forward to seeing him in a United jersey next year, and hope we see him in the changing room and helping the next crop of young defenders do something. And I think even after he hangs up his boots, I think there should be a place for him in that club to help coach the back lines. He needs to be kept around. I think it's quite important. Lisandro Martinez, I think everyone's favourite defender at the club now, but it's quite clear that this guy is going to have injury problems, very similar to Rafael Varane. And he is a left-footed centre-half, and they are very, very difficult to come by. And it's been a challenge for Ten Hag to be able to play the way he wants to play without Lisandro Martinez there, given the lack of options we have for left-footed players. With Martinez out as a left-footed player, Shaw out as a left-footed player, Malacia out as a left-footed player, United have been really caught out as a result of that. So it's quite important that we get left-sided players in. Of course, Lisandro Martinez is going to be kept, but can you rely on him to be playing 50, 60 games a season as a centre-half for Manchester United? The evidence would suggest no. So we need to manage that kind of a player well, because he is a first-teamer, he is a potential captain, but there are going to be injury worries there that we need to contend with, and that needs to be looked at. So Lisandro Martinez is the only actual starting or first team potential centre back I would keep. Johnny Evans, of course, knows he's going to be on the sidelines, but Varane, Maguire and Lindelof are all players that would be hoping and expecting to be playing as a first team player. Lindelof maybe not so much, but Maguire and Varane certainly. With young Kimwala coming through the youth ranks, I think that's a player that we can nurture quite well. But the players that I would be bringing in for United in the centre-half positions, let's start at right-back, actually. At right-back, with Diogo Dalot there, I think Jeremy Frimpong is the obvious connection. We've been linked with him for a while, but he could cost anywhere between 30 and 40 million, which is a huge amount to be paying for an area I don't think we need a huge amount of first-team cover. We might need to look at one of the young lads from the youth team coming in and providing some cover at that right-back position, but we're not... Frimpong is a first teamer, and it's going to be hard to rotate Frimpong and Dalot, given the fact that Dalot doesn't seem to get injured all that often. So that's a tough one. Jeremy Frimpong is the obvious link, but I don't know who we should go for there. It's a little bit unclear. I would probably promote someone from the youth ranks and have Dalot there, and you can rotate centre halves out into that right back position as well, because we will have right footed centre halves. In the centre-half positions, I would have Antonio Silva from Benfica. United have been over to watch a lot of Benfica's games to look at João Neves, who is a midfield kind of wonder kid that's coming through the Portuguese ranks, and a lot of people are going to be vying for his signature in the summer. But Antonio Silva, big young 21-year-old centre-half, 21 years of age, is a ball-carrying centre-half, very good with the ball at his feet, and he's a big lad as well, and he seems to be the next kind of generational talent that's coming through, as well as Goncalo Inacio, the other centre-half for Sporting Lisbon. And I think the two of them are going to provide the bedrock for the Portuguese national team in 5 or 6 years' time, once that new rotation of players comes through and the old guard leave. So Antonio Silva is the first and foremost. Jared Branthwaite, I think, is very important for United to get, not only because he's a young English talent, which fits the profile that Ineos wants to go for, which is young, English and talented. He's a bedrock in that Everton team. I did an episode on him before the season started that United were linked with him. He's a left footer, which is the most important thing, and they are very, very difficult to come by. If you try and look at any list of the top left-footed centre halves in the world, they are few and far between. Of course, you've got Vardiol, you've got David Alaba, you've got Pau Torres, and a few more, but it's very difficult to find a very strong left-footed centre-back who will be available and who will want to go to United. So Jared Branthwaite, to me, ticks all the boxes. I think it's an absolute certainty we will go for him, and I think United need to make a very, very serious bid to get him in. Given the fact that he's a left footer, that's very rare, very rare. To me, he should be the priority over Antonio Silva, given the fact that we need a left footer and there are more right foot options available other than left footed options. So Antonio Silva, Jared Branthwaite, and finally Jean-Claire Todibo, the Nice centre half who's been doing very, very well. Of course, Nice being owned by Ineos, and we've been linked with that player for at least 18 months, if not 2 years. And I think that's a transfer that will go through. Number one, because he's going to be probably a future French centre back. He's young, he's coachable, he's doing very well, and he's a bedrock in a very mean defensive Nice team. And of course, with the Ineos link, I think that makes it a very obvious transfer, and one that I think we can do for a very fair price, given our connection with Nice. So for me, they would be the options at centre half. Harry Amas coming in at left back, and even Jared Branthwaite, if we really needed it, as he is a left-footed player, might be able to fill in a very defensive fullback role if we needed a left-footer to deputise in those positions. So that is it for my review on the defensive line. A lot of outs, some suggestions on the ins. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Are there players that I'd get rid of that you want to keep? Are there players that I'd keep that you'd want to get rid of? And in terms of who we should be bringing in, do you have any other options? I mean, I know we've got Bremer, who's been very strongly linked from Juventus, obviously Scalvini as well from Atalanta, and there's a whole host of other centre halves that we've been linked with. So it remains to be seen what happens in the summer, but I think the defensive line is going to be where things are busiest. As always, thank you very, very much for joining me. If you like this episode, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit that notification button, and stay tuned for our episode tomorrow, where I'll be going through our midfield options. Have a very good day, and I'll see you on the next one.